My own son said, "You can sleep in the basement. It makes more sense." That was the moment I realized I no longer had a place in my own house. If something like this has happened to you, share your story in the comments. The first week after moving my things downstairs, mornings stopped following any pattern. The alarm went off earlier because the furnace kicked louder below ground, and sleep broke in short stretches. Coffee came from a travel mug, since the kitchen table was usually occupied. By the time boots were on, voices already floated from upstairs. None of them belonged to family. One morning, 3 cars blocked the driveway. A sedan idled while a man leaned against my garage door, scrolling on his phone. Another couple stepped out with overnight bags. They nodded as if I were the neighbor, not the homeowner. Morning, one of them said. No name followed, no explanation. Work ran late that day. When I pulled back in, the same cars were still there, plus one more wedged half onto the grass. The neighbor across the street stood near his mailbox, arms crossed. "You renting now?" he asked. "Not that I know of." He looked past me at the front door. "Might want to check." A white envelope waited on the counter that evening. Homeowners Association letterhead, parking violations, noise complaints, my name typed clean at the top. I set it beside my keys and went downstairs without saying anything. The next night, headlights swept across the basement window well close to midnight. Laughter followed. Someone stumbled. Another car door slammed. The floor above carried the sound longer than it used to. In the morning, I called Ethan while pulling on my jacket. "Are you running something out of the house?" I asked. "No," he said right away. "It's just friends staying over. Friends don't rotate every night. They're helping me out. You know how things are." A pause hung between us. "Don't make this bigger than it is," he added. The call ended before I replied. Later that week, a repair ticket took me near City Hall. Lunch came from a small diner across the street, the kind with laminated menus and no rush. Rosa Martinez slid into the booth across from me with a folder tucked under her arm. We'd crossed paths on inspections before. The conversation stayed casual. "You still working on North Lake Drive?" she asked. "Same place as I said." She stirred her coffee. "City's been tightening short-term rental checks. People don't realize how fast it escalates." "I wasn't asking," I said. "Didn't think you were." She pushed the sugar jar aside. "Just paperwork stuff. Permit zoning. Complaints trigger reviews. Names on deeds matter." The check arrived. Rosa stood, nodded once, and left for her office. That afternoon, a second letter came by email. City notice this time. Request for clarification about activity at my address. A deadline sat bolded near the bottom. By the weekend, the neighbor rang the bell. "Sorry," he said. "Cars again last night. My wife couldn't get out. I'll handle it. Hope so." Sunday evening, I lined the notices up on the workbench downstairs. HOA? City? Another email flagged urgent. Upstairs, voices moved from room to room. Someone dragged a suitcase across the floor. Boots hit the concrete floor earlier than they used to. The furnace cycled on and off through the ductwork, pushing heat unevenly. Getting dressed meant folding and unfolding the same clothes because storage space had shrunk to half a wall and a metal rack. By the time the stairs were climbed, voices already filled the kitchen. 2 people sat at the counter eating cereal from mismatched bowls. A third leaned against the fridge, scrolling through a phone. None of them looked up until the door opened. "Hey," one said, casual like this was normal. Keys were taken from the hook. The coffee pot was empty again. No explanation followed. The driveway filled fast these days. One morning, a pickup blocked the sidewalk. Another car sat crooked behind it. Someone laughed near the garage while hauling a duffel bag from the trunk. The sound carried across the street, and a curtain moved in the house opposite mine. "Are you Michael?" a woman asked as she passed. Yes. Thanks for letting us stay. She kept walking before anything else could be said. Work offered no relief. Calls stacked up. A supervisor asked if everything was stable at home after a city inquiry came through about one of the addresses on my route. Nothing official yet, just a heads up. The answer stayed short. Handling it. That evening, a man from 2 houses down waited near the curb. Not trying to be difficult, he said, hands raised. But the noise last night went past midnight. My kids had school. I understand. HOA might not. The envelope arrived the next day. Thin. Official. My name centered in block letters. Parking violations. Noise complaints. Reminder of community standards. The paper felt lighter than the weight it carried. Ethan stood in the living room when I walked in. Did you see this? I asked, holding it out. He glanced once. They're overreacting. Cars blocking driveways aren't an overreaction. They'll move next time. Next time keeps happening. A shrug followed. He picked up his phone. The call happened from the basement later that night. Reception was better near the stairs. Are you using the house for something else? I asked. No. That's not what it looks like. Looks don't matter. They're friends. They crash here sometimes. Sometimes doesn't involve rotating cars. Silence stretched. Then a sigh. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. I'm trying to get back on my feet. By putting my name on complaints, relax. I'll talk to them. The line went dead. 2 days later, a repair ticket pulled me near City Hall. Lunch came from a diner across the street. Vinyl booths. Clipped receipts hanging near the register. Rosa Martinez waved from the counter and slid into the booth across from me without ceremony. Busy week, she asked. Feels like it. She stirred her drink. City's been cracking down on short-term rentals. Complaints stack fast once neighbors notice patterns. No plans to rent anything. Good. A pause. Because once a notice goes out, timelines don't slow down. Whose name do they use? The owner on record. That answer landed clean. Rosa pushed a folded napkin aside. Not advice, just how it works. The check arrived. She stood, wished me luck, and headed back toward the building. That night, headlights swept across the driveway again. Laughter followed. Someone argued about directions. A door slammed harder than needed. Morning brought another knock. This time, the HOA board member stood there holding a clipboard. We've logged 3 incidents this week, she said. This is the first formal warning. Understood. Address it soon. She handed over the notice and walked away. Ethan waved it off when it was shown to him. They're dramatic. They're documenting. So what? So it's my problem. Everything's your problem lately, he shot back. By Friday, an email from the city arrived. Subject line flagged urgent. Request for clarification regarding activity at the property. A deadline followed. No accusation yet. Just questions. The listing showed up by accident. A co-worker passed his phone across the table during lunch, scrolling through places near downtown. Prices are wild, he said. Look at this one. The address caught my attention before the photos did. Same street, same number. My house. The name on the listing wasn't mine. The pictures loaded slowly. Living room first. Couch cushions arranged differently, but still mine. The lamp near the wall outlet I'd fixed last winter. Kitchen next. Countertop cleared except for a bowl I recognized. The hallway shot stopped just short of the basement door. Dates filled the calendar below. Booked, nearly every night. Back at work, the screen stayed open longer than it should have. Zooming in showed details no stranger would notice. The scuff near the stair rail. A dent on the fridge door. None of it staged. Just rearranged. Another email waited by the time I got home. This one from the city. Polite language, direct questions, clarification requested regarding activity at my address, a response window attached. The doorbell rang before a reply was drafted. A man stood on the porch holding a flyer from the listing site. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "Just checking. This a rental? It isn't." He looked at the house, then back at me. "Website says otherwise. It's being handled." He nodded, unconvinced, and walked back down the steps. Ethan was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. He lowered it when he saw the screen still open on my device. "What's that?" "Our house," I said, turning it toward him. The color drained fast. "That's not... It's listed under another name." A breath left him sharply. "I was going to tell you. When things stabilized. Bookings look stable." He rubbed his face. "It's temporary. Temporary with a full calendar." "You don't get it," he said. "I needed cash. Fast. Using my address. Our address. That's not how paperwork works." His tone shifted. "I didn't think it would blow up like this. It already has. People overreact. Neighbors. HOA. Everyone's dramatic. The city isn't." Silence followed. He stared at the floor, then back at the phone. "I'll take it down," he said. "After this week?" "No. You can't just pull the plug. I've got commitments. Those aren't mine. They're guests. They're strangers." His voice cracked. "I'm trying to fix things by risking mine." The argument stalled there. He left the room without another word. The next morning started with another knock. Same neighbor from before. Less patience this time. "2 cars blocked my driveway overnight," he said. "I called it in." "I understand." "Do you?" "Yes." At City Hall later that day, Rosa sat behind the counter, shuffling forms. She recognized me before I spoke. "Looks like it escalated," she said. "A listing surfaced." She nodded. "That'll do it." A folder slid across the desk. "These are the documents they'll ask for. Ownership, permits, utility records. Anything else timeline matters. Meaning earlier cooperation helps. Later explanations get expensive. No lecture followed. No reassurance either. Back home, the laptop stayed open on the dining table while numbers stacked up. Water usage had spiked. Power bills jumped twice what they used to be. Screenshots piled into a folder. The booking calendar refreshed again, adding another name. Ethan hovered nearby, watching. "You don't have to do this," he said. "This is already done. You're turning this into a legal thing. It became one without asking." He paced. "So you're choosing them over me. I'm choosing to stop it." He laughed, once sharp. "You always do this. Shut down. Make everything about rules. Rules are what's left. They won't care about context. They care about records." His shoulders slumped. "I thought you'd give me time. I gave you space. That's not the same." The notice arrived by certified mail and email within the same hour. City seal. Reference number. My name printed clean across the top. Violation of property use. Short-term rental without permit. Deadline for response set at 5 business days. A second page listed potential fines if activity continued. The phone buzzed before the envelope hit the counter. "You see what you've done?" Ethan said. "What I've done, they're coming after us." "After me," I said. "The notice isn't addressed to you. That's technical." "So are fines." He paced the living room, stepping around a backpack and a pair of shoes that weren't his. "You could have talked to me first." "We did talk. You went behind my back. The city knocked first. They wouldn't have if you'd handled this like family. Family doesn't reroute penalties." He stopped and faced me. "You're supposed to protect this house." "I am." "By reporting it, by stopping it." His voice rose. "You don't care what happens to me. I care about what's happening here. That's the problem," he said. "You only care about rules." A knock came at the door. Not the doorbell. Knuckles firm and practiced. 2 inspectors stood on the porch. Badges visible. Clipboards ready. "We're here for a compliance check," one said. Property owner Michael Turner. That's me. We received multiple complaints. I wasn't notified you were coming. Inspections can be unannounced. Ethan shifted behind me. This is unnecessary. The taller inspector glanced past him. We'll need access to common areas. They walked through without waiting for approval. Notes followed. Photos snapped. One asked how many guests stayed per week. Another pointed at the luggage stacked near the stairs. Do you rent rooms, she asked. No. Do others pay to stay here? Not to me. That's not the question. Ethan jumped in. I handle that. Sir, the inspector said, are you the property owner? No. Then we'll need you to step aside. They finished in under 20 minutes. A carbon copy of the report landed on the table. Non-compliance noted. Follow-up pending. Work called while the inspectors were still pulling away. Can you make the afternoon service call? My supervisor asked. City's flagged one of your addresses. Might be a conflict. I can't, I said. I need to handle paperwork. A pause. We'll mark it unpaid. That's fine. It wasn't, but the call ended there. Ethan watched me fold the report into the envelope. You didn't have to let them in, he said. They had a warrant. No, they didn't. They didn't need one. He laughed once. You're always so calm when things fall apart. Things fall apart faster when ignored. You act like this is my fault. It is your listing. You didn't stop me. That's not consent. Another email arrived before dinner. This one outlined potential fines per day if activity continued. The amount climbed fast. Ethan read it over my shoulder. That's ridiculous. It's standard. So you're choosing them again. I'm choosing not to lose the house. You won't, he said. You're being dramatic. A call from the city followed. A clerk confirmed receipt of my earlier submission and added notes from the inspection. Owner responsibility applies regardless of who posted the listing, she said. We'll need documentation showing cessation. Understood. When can you provide it? As soon as possible. After the call, Ethan dropped onto the couch. You just keep escalating. I'm responding. To strangers, to notices. You'd rather side with paperwork than your own son. I'd rather keep a roof. He stood up abruptly. I'll take it down. Today. After this weekend. No. You can't dictate everything. I can dictate what happens under my name. He stared at me, jaw tight. You think this makes you strong? I think it keeps things standing. He grabbed his jacket and left the door closing harder than necessary. The evening passed with fewer voices than usual. Cars still came and went, but quieter. The laptop stayed open at the dining table tabs filled with forms and checklists. A calendar reminder blinked for the response deadline. Another message from the city arrived close to midnight, confirming the inspection report was added to the case file. The second notice came folded inside a thicker envelope. Fines outlined in columns. Dates highlighted. A schedule attached for meetings with city inspectors. Each page carried the same name. Mine. The phone rang while the papers were still spread across the table. Mr. Turner, the inspector, said, we'll need you available Tuesday morning. Non-compliance review. I'll be there. There may be additional penalties if activity hasn't stopped. It has. We'll verify. After the call, the house stayed active above me. Doors opened, shoes scraped. Someone laughed, then corrected themselves when another voice cut in. Downstairs, a storage bin held documents I hadn't touched in years. Mortgage statements, insurance riders, policy updates mailed and forgotten. Everything came out onto the bench. Clauses blurred together until one line stood out. Commercial use exclusions, liability limits, coverage voided if misrepresented. The risk wasn't theoretical. It had my address on it. Another letter slid under the door an hour later. This one from a law office contracted by the city. Formal language. Compliance demanded. A response window shorter than the first. Ethan came down the stairs while I was sorting. You're really doing this? he said. This is already happening. You could slow it down. How by backing off? From what from them? They don't back off. He leaned against the wall. You don't know what it's like right now. I know what's being charged. That's money, he snapped. I'm talking about survival. You're talking about using my name. His hands shook as he shoved them into his pockets. I didn't plan for it to get this far. You planned to collect bookings. I planned to breathe at my expense. He looked up. You've always had a safety net. This house is it. You won't lose it. You don't get to decide that. The argument stalled. He stared at the paperwork, then away. I need time, he said. Just a little. You don't have it. That's easy for you to say. No, I said. It's not. Silence followed, broken by a car door outside. Later that afternoon, a certified envelope arrived, addressed to me. It sat unopened on the counter until evening. When I finally reached for it, Ethan stood there holding it. I signed for that earlier, he said. They needed someone home. You're not authorized. It's just a signature. It's a legal notice. So you don't touch my mail. He bristled. I live here. You don't own this. That doesn't matter. It does. He waved it off. You're blowing this up. No, I said. You are. The letter confirmed escalation. Hearing scheduled. Additional documentation required. Failure to appear noted as non-cooperation. Work called again. A full day canceled next week due to the ongoing review. City conflict, my supervisor said. We'll revisit once it clears. Bills didn't pause. That night, the upstairs traffic slowed. Fewer voices, shorter stays. The listing page finally went dark. Too late to erase the trail. At the kitchen table, forms stacked into neat piles, evidence labeled, dates cross-checked, utility statements highlighted, screenshots printed. Ethan hovered at the doorway. You're choosing strangers over blood, he said. I'm choosing accountability. You think that makes you right? I think it keeps me solvent. You could have trusted me. I did. You could have covered for me. I did. You could have protected me. I protected the house. His jaw tightened. So that's it. That's the line. He waited for more. Nothing followed. The first call came from the city clerk, not enforcement. Her tone stayed neutral, almost careful. We've expanded the scope of the review, she said. Additional records surfaced tied to your address. What kind of records? Commercial activity beyond lodging? An email followed before the call ended. Attachments stacked fast. Vendor registrations, temporary business listings, a catering permit request, all pointing back to the same location. My house. None of it carried my name. Every form used a variation of someone else's. At City Hall later that morning, Rosa met me near the records window. She didn't smile this time. A folder slid across the counter, thicker than the last. They cross-reference addresses, she said. Once something flags, it pulls everything attached to it. How far back? Far enough. The pages showed patterns. Short-term stays were only one piece. Weekend pop-up events, equipment rentals, payment apps routing through third-party accounts. Everything temporary, everything layered to avoid notice. What happens now? I asked. She tapped the folder. They widen the net. That afternoon, another notice arrived. This one warned of potential account holds if activity continued. It listed platforms, not names. Ethan called an hour later. You talked to them again, he said. They reached out. You're feeding them. I'm answering. You're giving them ammo. They already have it. He exhaled hard. You don't understand how this works. I'm learning. It's not what it looks like. The paperwork says otherwise. You think I wanted this, he snapped. I did what I had to. You did what you wanted. He laughed. Easy to say when you've never had to scramble. I've scrambled my whole life. Not like this. You don't get to decide that. The call ended without agreement. By midweek, Inspectors requested bank statements connected to utilities. Usage spikes flagged accounts indirectly. Payments traced back through aliases. The trail stayed legal until it didn't. Another meeting followed. This time a city attorney joined by phone. "Owner liability applies," she said, "regardless of who initiated transactions. I understand. We'll proceed accordingly." Ethan tried to get ahead of it. Calls went out to relatives. Messages landed in group chats. A version of events started circulating that left out details and added emotion. "He's turning me in," one message read. Another followed. "He wants me gone." None mentioned the listings or the accounts. At dinner, he confronted me again. "You could stop this," he said. "Withdraw cooperation. That's not how it works. It is if you say nothing. Silence isn't neutral anymore. You're choosing them. I'm choosing facts. You're choosing to ruin me. I'm choosing to limit damage. To yourself. To everything." He leaned forward. "You think this ends with paperwork? It ends with resolution. Courts don't care about family. They care about records. Then why keep pushing? Because pulling back makes it worse." The next email confirmed the review expanded to zoning and tax compliance. Another warned of temporary holds on any account directly tied to the address if violations persisted. Work sent a revised schedule, fewer hours, temporary reassignment. At City Hall again, Rosa handed over a checklist. "They'll ask for sworn statements next," she said. "Consistency matters. From whom everyone involved. Even him." "Yes." That evening, Ethan practiced answers out loud while pacing. "They didn't tell me it was illegal," he said. "They said it was fine. It wasn't income. It was reimbursement. None of it matched the documents." When asked directly by an investigator over speakerphone, his story shifted. "I thought the listing was paused." It wasn't. "I didn't manage payments. Records showed otherwise. I didn't know the address was still attached. Forms said it was required. Contradictions stacked quickly. Each answer opened another question. Throughout it all, cooperation stayed consistent. Files delivered when requested. No bargaining. No explanations beyond what the forms asked for." A letter arrived near the end of the week marked preliminary determination. It referenced potential court involvement regarding property use and occupancy control. Ethan read it in silence. "They're taking the house," he said finally. "No," I said. "They're deciding who controls it. That's the same thing." "It isn't." He shook his head. "You didn't have to go this far. It went far on its own." The attorney's office sat 2 blocks from the courthouse. No sign out front beyond a name etched into glass. The meeting lasted less than an hour. Deeds reviewed. Notices aligned by date. Screenshots labeled and cross-checked. "This part matters," she said, tapping the page that listed ownership. Control follows title. Everything else is noise. A retainer changed hands. A plan followed. Not aggressive. Precise. The city scheduled the hearing within the week. A separate notice went out to Ethan requiring an independent statement. No joint responses, no shared counsel. The platforms he'd referenced before sent automated emails soon after suspending listings linked to the address pending review. Permits he'd cited vanished from the registry flagged as incomplete or invalid. At home, the tone shifted. Fewer words, less movement. When mail arrived, it went unopened on the counter until names were checked. Calls came for him, not for me. Messages arrived asking for explanations I didn't provide. The morning of the hearing moved on schedule. Parking meters clicked. Security waved people through. A clerk called names from a list and pointed to seats without looking up. Ethan sat 3 rows back. He didn't wave, didn't look over. His attorney leaned in, whispered, then straightened again. When our case was called, the exchange stayed brief. Evidence submitted, ownership confirmed, violations summarized. The judge asked 3 questions. Each answer matched the record. Any objection to temporary relief, the judge asked. Ethan's attorney requested time. The request was denied. The order is limited, the judge said. Occupancy and control, not title. A date followed, a deadline. 7 days to vacate. No reaction came from the bench. No lecture either. Outside, Ethan stood near the steps, hands in pockets. His attorney spoke low, then left. Silence settled between us. "You happy now?" he asked. "The house needs to reset," I said. "That's it. That's it." He stared past me. "You always choose systems. I choose boundaries." A courier delivered the order that afternoon. Copies made. One went into a folder labeled active. Another sat by the door. At home he packed without comment. Boxes replaced suitcases. Items stacked in corners. Friends came to help quieter than before. Cars stayed fewer. Engines cut fast. On the third night he stopped near the stairs. "You didn't have to push it to court," he said. "You pushed it there. I needed a chance. You took chances." He nodded once, then turned away. By the end of the week, the rooms looked different, less crowded. The kitchen table cleared. The counter stayed free of luggage tags and spare keys. The attorney called to confirm compliance. The city sent a follow-up acknowledging receipt of the court order. A final email closed the immediate case pending inspection. At work hours returned to normal. The supervisor kept it short. "Looks resolved," he said. Back on the schedule. The day Ethan left, he carried the last box to the trunk and closed it without slamming. He paused, then handed me the spare key. "Mail will forward," he said. "Good." The deadline passed without drama. Ethan left early that morning, the trunk packed tight, the back seat cleared. No argument followed. No last request. The spare key stayed on the counter where he'd placed it the night before. When the door closed, the sound carried through the house and stopped. Paperwork moved faster once the address cleared. The city confirmed compliance. Fines were adjusted and paid through the portal. A receipt landed in my inbox with a reference number and a line that read, "Case closed pending final inspection." The HOA sent a short note acknowledging resolution. No apology. No follow-up. The inspector returned 2 days later. He walked through checked rooms, marked boxes, and asked if the property would be owner-occupied going forward. "Yes," I said. He nodded, finished the form, and left. Downstairs, the basement no longer served a purpose. The folding bed went back to storage. Tools returned to their shelves. The metal rack emptied piece by piece. A box labeled Winter came up the stairs and slid back into the closet where it had always been. Upstairs, furniture shifted back into place without ceremony. The couch faced the wall again. Chairs returned to their original spots. Extra sets of keys were dropped into a drawer and left there. The kitchen counter stayed clear. Work resumed its old rhythm. Early calls, long drives, fixes logged and signed off. The supervisor stopped asking questions. The schedule stayed full but manageable. Paychecks returned to normal. Mail slowed. No more certified envelopes, no warnings. The address appeared once more as just an address. Rosa crossed paths with me at City Hall one afternoon while I waited for a permit stamp unrelated to home. She glanced at the clipboard and nodded. "Looks settled," she said. "It is." She hesitated, then added, "These things usually end louder. Not this one." "That helps." The conversation moved on. Evenings filled with small tasks. Trash out on the right day. Lawn trimmed. Lights turned off room by room. The house carried less traffic and fewer interruptions. Neighbors waved again without stopping to ask questions. The spare room stayed empty. No attempt was made to fill it. Contact stayed minimal. A text came once from an unknown number asking if mail had arrived. It was forwarded to the address provided and left at that. No reply followed. None was expected. A final letter arrived from the city clerk confirming closure. It went into the filing cabinet alongside the stamped court order and receipts. The folder slid back into place. The basement door stayed open after that. No reason to keep it shut. One Friday afternoon, a reminder popped up on my phone about a weekend course I'd postponed twice before. The registration deadline closed that night. The location sat a few hours north outside the city, far enough to require an overnight stay. The sign-up page stayed open longer than necessary, then closed once the payment processed. A small bag came out of the closet. Just the essentials. No extra planning. The night before leaving the house went through its usual checks. Windows latched, thermostat set, lights off. The key tray held only one set now. Morning came early. Coffee poured. The door locked with a familiar click. The bag went into the trunk and stayed there. At the end of the driveway, the house looked the same as it always had. No changes worth noting. The door stayed closed. The windows stayed clear. The engine started. The garage door lifted and settled back down. The road out of the neighborhood opened up ahead, and traffic stayed light enough to keep moving as the city thinned behind me.